What's going on, everybody? Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Motorola Moto G Play 2023 and the Samsung Galaxy A13. And keep in mind, this is the Samsung Galaxy A13 4G. The A13 5G, that now actually has a successor out, is a completely different phone. Now, that being said, if you do end up wanting to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I will be linking to several other videos about each of them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But otherwise, let's get into it. So with the Motorola Moto G Play 2023, we're getting a 6.5-inch 90Hz IPS LCD display with a 720p resolution, a PPI of 270, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. With the Samsung Galaxy A13, we're getting a 6.6-inch PLS LCD display with a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 400, and this phone also has a 20:9 aspect ratio. So on one hand, with the Moto G Play, for what it is, this display is pretty much average. Despite only having a 720p resolution, things do look decently sharp. The colors and brightness are okay. It is nice that we do get a 90Hz refresh rate here. Which basically makes the movement on the screen a bit faster and smoother, making the phone in general feel a bit more premium. But aside from that, again, compared to other entry-level phones like it, the display we're getting here is pretty much the exact same. On the other hand though, with the Samsung Galaxy A13, despite being pretty much the same in most ways, the 1080p resolution does give it a pretty big edge. The image is quite a bit sharper, and in general on the A13, it is also a tiny bit larger at 6.6 inches versus again 6.5 with the Moto G Play. But in general, because of the 1080p resolution, which you don't typically find in phones in this price range, things are going to look quite a bit better on the Samsung Galaxy A13. So if you're consuming a lot of content, like maybe you're watching lots of videos or looking at photos or doing something like that where the image quality is a bit more important, for that sort of activity, the Samsung Galaxy A13 will be a much better choice. But that being said, of course, keep in mind, the Moto G Play, while not having as nice of an image, still doesn't have a bad display. And if you're just watching the occasional video every now and then, but you're not really consuming a ton of content or anything, with this phone, it still will at least get the job done. But again, if having a nicer display is more of a priority for you, then for that, the A13 will still definitely be a much better choice. Now for storage, both phones are getting 32GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion. And the reason I say this, despite this A13 in my hand actually having 64GB, is because chances are, if you're considering the Moto G Play, you're most likely going to be getting either of these phones through a US carrier, and with the version of the Samsung Galaxy A13 you get through a US carrier. Unfortunately, as far as I know, they all only have 32GB. So unfortunately, only the international version of the Samsung Galaxy A13 actually has 64. So unless you want to go way out of your way and get the unlocked version, which for a phone like this is probably not worth it, then with either phone, you are only getting 32GB of internal storage. And in my opinion, at this point in 2023, this is really just not enough. So in general, I would say storage is definitely a big weakness for both phones. That being said though, if you're really hardly doing anything on your phone, maybe you only have a few different apps, and aside from that, all you're really putting on your phone is stuff like photos and videos, which you can easily offload to a microSD card anyway. In that case, you might at least get by, but again, in general, I feel like in this day and age, 64GB is really a bare minimum. And for almost everyone, anything less than that is just not going to be enough. So if storage is more important to you, definitely keep in mind. Unless again, you get the unlocked version of the Samsung Galaxy A13, neither phone really has a whole lot of storage. For security features, both phones do have fingerprint scanners. With the Moto G Play, it's right here on the back. And with the Samsung Galaxy A13, it's right here on the power key. In addition to this, the Samsung Galaxy A13 does have Face Unlock, but the Moto G Play doesn't. Now in general, for most people, I feel like a fingerprint scanner is probably going to be enough. I haven't really heard of anyone being actually disappointed that a phone doesn't have Face Unlock, but just keep in mind, if you do prefer Face Unlock, then you might want to go with the A13 instead. But starting with the Moto G Play, let's give these fingerprint scanners a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go, so real fast and responsive. And now for the Samsung Galaxy A13. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, both fingerprint scanners worked real well, no issues at all. And again, in case you do like to use Face Unlock, keep in mind, the Samsung Galaxy A13 has it, and the Moto G Play doesn't. Now taking a look at the cameras here, with the Moto G Play, we got a real nice looking hole punch design for the front facing camera. This camera is 5 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 16 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. With the Samsung Galaxy A13, we got a water drop notch design for the front facing camera. This camera is 8 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So when it comes to camera features, for what they are, both phones are actually pretty good. That being said though, again, the Samsung Galaxy A13 does actually have an ultra wide camera, whereas unfortunately, the Moto G Play, while having a macro camera, doesn't have an ultra wide camera. So if you do want an ultra wide camera, then you might want to go with the Samsung Galaxy A13. Now, when it comes to photo quality, I do think the Samsung Galaxy A13 is quite a bit better. With this phone, as you might expect from a 50 megapixel camera, it does take really good photos. So in general, if you're taking a lot of pictures, you want a wider variety of features, and you want to maximize the photo quality you get for the money, then in that case, again, I do think the Samsung Galaxy A13 will be a much better choice. That being said though, with the Moto G Play, although the photo quality is not nearly as good, I do think it's at least decent. I mean, if you want to post a couple nice Instagram photos every now and then, it will get the job done and it doesn't look terrible. So if you're not really taking a ton of photos and you just want a decent camera that works, then yeah, the Moto G Play is going to be perfectly fine. But again, if you really do like to take a lot of photos, then I do think you are going to be much happier with the A13. To give you an idea of what the cameras can do, first here are some pictures taken with the Moto G Play. Again, definitely not bad. I mean, for the occasional photo every now and then, it will get the job done. And if you were to take a picture with this phone and post it on Instagram, for example, I do think things, while not being amazing, will still turn out perfectly fine. And then here's some pictures taken with the Samsung Galaxy A13, and again, I do think the A13 has much better quality. In fact, just considering this is a really affordable entry-level phone, I feel like in this price range, for what it is, the Samsung Galaxy A13 might actually have one of the best cameras in this price range. So again, if you are taking a lot of pictures, if the camera is more of a priority for you, then between the two, I would definitely go with the Samsung Galaxy A13, definitely quite a bit better. But on the other hand, again, the Moto G Play really isn't terrible, so if you're really just taking a couple pictures every now and then, and you don't really care whether or not you have the best quality, the Moto G Play will at least get the job done. Now, when it comes to the RAM and processor, I will say honestly, both phones are pretty slow. Sure, considering these are both really affordable entry-level devices, performance-wise, I was definitely not expecting anything crazy fast. But that being said, even compared to most other entry-level phones, like the Moto G Power or the Samsung Galaxy A03s or a bunch of cheap TCL phones or whatever they may be, compared to other entry-level phones too, when it comes to performance, these phones are really near the bottom. With the Moto G Play, we are getting 3GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio G37 processor, and with the Samsung Galaxy A13, we're getting 4GB of RAM, or I think it's 3 through a US carrier, and this phone has the Exynos 850. And again, in general, when it comes to performance, sure, if you're doing really basic activities like occasional web browsing, some really light social media, and watching the occasional video every now and then, for that kind of stuff, either phone will at least get the job done. But again, definitely keep in mind, neither phone is fast by any means. So if you are looking for a phone that's decently fast, you're probably going to want to go with something else altogether. Now that being said, I did run benchmark tests on these phones using Geekbench 5, and here are the results I got. So as you can see here, there's really not that much of a difference. In fact, for the multi-core score, they're pretty much the exact same. And again, neither phone is very fast. So again, if you really care about performance, I would definitely go with something else. But if you are looking for a phone for more of the bare minimum, and you're not really going to be using it a whole lot besides more light, basic, occasional activities, in that case, either phone will get the job done just fine. Now for the batteries, both phones do have 5000 mAh batteries, with the Moto G Play supporting 10W fast charging and the Samsung Galaxy A13 supporting 15. When it comes to charging speeds, there's really not that huge of a difference. I mean, technically the A13 is going to charge a bit faster, but in general, with the Moto G Play, the charging speeds really aren't bad either. Sure, they're not going to be nearly as fast as something that has like 25W fast charging, but for most people, I feel like when it comes to charging, either phone is going to be perfectly fine. And for stuff like battery life and longevity, with 5000 mAh batteries, you can expect to get great battery life and longevity here. So if you're in a situation where maybe you're not always around a charger and you need something that's really going to last all day, or maybe you're concerned about longevity, so down the road as the battery degrades, you want to make sure your phone is still going to last for quite a while. In any situation like that where you really want a phone with a large battery, either phone will be a great choice. Now for the software, with the Moto G Play, despite being the newer phone, we are getting a slightly older software with the Android 12, whereas the Samsung Galaxy A13 actually does have Android 13. So if you care about the software, keep in mind, the Moto G Play, just judging by how like the Moto G Pure, which is pretty much last year's equivalent to this phone, actually did end up getting the upgrade from Android 11 to Android 12. I expect the same thing is probably eventually going to happen with the Moto G Play. But again, if you really want the latest version of Android as it comes out, or at least close to when it comes out, then keep in mind, with the Samsung Galaxy A13, this phone again does have Android 13, and not only that, but it is going to get Android 14 and 15 too. So in general, for both the current software and the software support in the future, the Samsung Galaxy A13 definitely has a huge advantage. As far as other features go, unfortunately, neither phone has NFC. So if you like to make contactless mobile payments using tap and pay, then you are going to want to go with a different phone. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? In general, I feel like in pretty much every way where there's actually a difference, the Samsung Galaxy A13 is the better phone here. Now there are three main reasons for this. First of all, with the Samsung Galaxy A13, again, we are getting a 1080p resolution on the display, which does make a huge difference, especially if you're consuming a lot of content. So with the A13, things are going to look quite a bit better here. The second thing is the camera. With this phone, again, we do get an ultra-wide camera, and not only that, but as you saw earlier, the photo quality with this phone is just so much better. So if you do like to take a lot of pictures, definitely keep this in mind. And then finally, with this phone, we're not only getting Android 13, but the long-term software support is just so much better, because even if and when the Moto G Play does eventually get Android 13, I really doubt it's going to get anything beyond that. Whereas with the Samsung Galaxy A13, you can also expect several other major updates in the future. So overall, if you really want to maximize the value that you get for the money, between these two, I would definitely go with the Samsung Galaxy A13. But that being said, if you do find a really good deal with the Moto G Play, maybe you're going through a carrier, and this is the phone they're offering for free, in that case, if you really just need a basic entry-level phone that gets the job done, but not a whole lot else, then this phone is still not going to be a bad option. But this concludes my comparison between the Motorola Moto G Play 2023 and the Samsung Galaxy A13. Again, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I will be linking to several other videos about each of them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalibis Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.